my command and reclaim these relics of hatred.
Welcome back to another marvelous video. Today we're talking about a fan favorite, X-Men 97. It premiered in March 2024 following the team of mutants who found themselves in disarray after the supposed death of Charles Xavier. With the show's dynamic storytelling and striking animation, we got to see all of our favorite characters in action once again. From Magneto's return as the leader of the X-Men to Gambit and Rogue's playful romance, along with everything that led up to the tragic Genoshan massacre. With Season 1's explosive end, we can't help but imagine how the show will shape up Apocalypse's story. Hopefully we won't have to wait another 30 years to find out, but until we do, let's rank some of the strongest characters in X-Men 97 who got to show off their cool mutant powers and how they played a pivotal role in the story so far. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means an awful lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
What is your name? My name is En Sabanur.
Apocalypse. At the end of Season 1, the world was saved from total destruction at the cost of Operation Zero Tolerance. Big loss, right? But the fallout from the final battle with Bastion revealed that the X-Men had been scattered through time. Cyclops and Jean traveled 2,000 years into the future, while Magneto and several X-Men were thrown 5,000 years into the past. Magneto, along with Xavier, Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Beast, encounter En Sabanur in ancient Egypt circa 3000 BC. Fans of the comics recognize this warrior as a young Apocalypse. En Sabanur was born into a tribe in Akaba, and they feared this infant with gray skin and blue lines running across his face. The Akaba tribe was massacred by the Sandstormers, and their leader took En Sabanur in as his own. Nur hardened under the hate emanating from regular folk. He adopted an extremist philosophy of survival of the fittest. He was feared and worshipped like a god for centuries, and began to employ his strike force, the Horsemen of Apocalypse. When he was recruited by the Celestials, they boosted his already powerful abilities to an ungodly level. He was made the evolutionary caretaker, which made him not only immortal, but also able to resurrect himself. His powers include the ability to manipulate his atomic structure and biomorph and bestow powers unto himself, all augmented by celestial technology.
Be animals and be caged.
Magneto, a broken boy who grew up to become a sympathetic anti-hero. In X-Men 97, we see him at the end of episode 1 as he reveals the fact that Xavier has left the X-Men and his school to him in his final will and testament. In this role, Magneto even refrained from killing anti-mutant militants. But he had had enough of that by the end of the season and declared war on humanity. In a subtle nod to the comic's Ultimatum storyline, Magneto headed for the North Pole, unleashed a powerful EMP, and lifted Asteroid M back into the air. That being said, X-Men 97 added layers of nuance to his once strictly villainous character. Magneto, originally named Eric Magnus Lensher, had seen the most rotten facets of humanity in his earliest years. He faced unspeakable atrocities during his time in the concentration camp Auschwitz. The death of his daughter was the moment his mutant powers manifested for the first time. After liberation, he attempted to stick to the right path and use his powers for the greater good, but with the killing of his loved ones, his faith in humanity also died away. As an alpha-level mutant, Magneto also came to be known as the Master of Magnetism. His manipulation of magnetic fields was strong enough to hold a headless Celestial together. This was supplemented by his razor-sharp control of the electromagnetic spectrum. He's as powerful as the forces that hold our planet together. Jean Grey. Known as one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful telepathic mutant to ever exist, Jean Grey Summers was shown to be an essential member of the X-Men this season, helping her husband stay grounded as the team leader. She also gave the team a sense of unity and purpose. A strange twist revealed that the pregnant Jean was actually a clone made by Mr. Sinister, Madeline Pryor. While the real Jean stumbled back into the story in episode 2, Jean often found herself in a strange love triangle with conflicting feelings towards her husband and Wolverine. But beyond all of this, Jean always held back her power and came across as a kind soul. As a little girl, she witnessed her best friend dying, which triggered her mutant abilities. Her surge of telepathic power was overwhelming, but she was soon taken in by Charles Xavier, who was a telepath himself. She was the last member to join Xavier's first class. She's most commonly known for being a host for the Phoenix Force, one of the oldest cosmic entities, which was also known to be the manifestation of the prime universal force of life. This being of primordial energy had let Jean borrow said energy when she was younger. After a short period as the host, Jean was corrupted by the Hellfire Club, which began the Dark Phoenix saga. As a psionic of the highest order, Jean Grey possesses the strongest offensive and defensive telepathic abilities. These are memory manipulation, personality alteration, mental paralysis, healing trauma, and astral projection, among countless others.
Let us see how their mob manners fare against the shock of good conduct.
Storm! The majestic Wind Rider, Aurora Monroe, more popularly known as Storm, has divided fans' opinions with her story arc in X-Men 97. In the second episode, the Omega-level mutant was hit with a concentrated radiation beam fired by the Executioner. This impact stripped her of her mutant abilities. For the first time in her life, Storm couldn't feel the essence of the breeze around her, and lightning scared her. Her powers did return in episode 6, but some fans didn't agree with the way Storm dealt with this loss. Did her chosen family, aka the X-Men, only admire her because of her cool weather powers? Or was it her nature as a kind, wise, and level-headed person in the most nerve-wracking situation? Aurora is actually a descendant of a line of goddesses like African priestesses. All of them wore white hair, blue eyes, and magic. When she was just 6 months old, her parents were killed in an unfortunate plane crash. She wandered the lands, nearly dying in the Sahara Desert, but her mutant powers manifested in this moment of life or death. She was given refuge by an elderly tribal woman, Ainet, who taught her how to use her powers responsibly. As one of the most powerful mutants to exist, Storm's undiluted powers are said to be incalculable. We're talking about her precise atmokinesis, which means she has the ability to control every type of weather. This goes hand in hand with her Earthlink, a primal bond with our planet's biosphere itself. She is a weather witch to be worshipped for sure.
Then how about we spice up them rules?
Rogue! The adopted child of Mystique and Destiny, Anna Marie has one of the most terrifying sets of abilities imaginable. In X-Men 97, Rogue was shown to be a member of the core team. Her playful flirting with Gambit was sweet despite her confusing relationship with Magneto. What puts her in the ranks of the strongest mutants though? In episode 7, Bright Eyes, Rogue goes, well, rogue, as she attacks a top-secret facility to gain more intel on General Thunderbolt Ross. Keep in mind that this facility was built to stand against the Hulk, but Rogue tossed tanks around like they weighed nothing. X-Men 97 did true justice, showing the extent of her powers compared to the wasted potential of her live-action counterpart in some of the X-Men films. Moving on to her origins, Anna faced a difficult life at home and decided to run away. She had to fend for herself, eventually picking up the alias of Rogue. She encountered the mutant shapeshifter Mystique, who understood the outcast child and took her in. Rogue was raised by Mystique and her partner Destiny, who foresaw their adopted daughter's future as a mutant terrorist. Rogue's first kiss scarred her for life. When she kissed a boy named Cody Robbins, her mutant powers manifested, which sucked out his life energy and left him in a coma. Rogue's main power is the life force and memory absorption of all sentient beings through skin-to-skin physical contact. She's capable of absorbing the superhuman and psionic abilities of any given mutant. Exodus. Grand Duc Beignet du Paris is an ancient mutant hailing all the way back from medieval France. As Apocalypse's champion, Exodus made a brief appearance in X-Men 97. In episode 5, Exodus is part of the dancing crowd of mutants in Genosha. Although this was a blink and you'll miss it cameo, Exodus's powers are incredibly cool. In the 12th century, Beignet was a crusader for the Knights Templar, being officially endorsed by the Catholic Church. His quest to search for the Tower of Power would lead him all the way to Aqaba. Here, he was challenged to a duel by a secret servant from Apocalypse. Eventually, a seemingly omnipresent voice asked him if he was ready to step into his full power. A boulder came crashing down, but his latent mutant abilities came to life just in time. After being captured by Apocalypse, Beignet was turned into Exodus, as we know him today. In the modern era, he was found by Magneto and became his right-hand man. Exodus was classified as an Omega-level mutant by Charles Xavier. His telepathy, telekinesis, and teleportation are all powered by confidence. As a mutant of faith, his abilities are more potent when people believe in him. He can also manifest himself as a psionic vampire, feeding on the energies of others for his own advantage.
And all children of the atom.
Professor X. Charles Xavier dedicated most of his life to achieving his vision of peaceful relations between humans and mutants. His school for gifted youngsters was built on many philosophies such as this. He was last seen in the final episode of the 90s show X-Men the Animated Series. He was attacked by Henry Gyrick and put in a deadly coma. Charles had to be taken to the Shi'ar homeworld to recover, and the rest of the team believed him to be dead, as Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, momentarily became the leader of the X-Men. But in episode 6 of X-Men 97, Xavier made a dramatic appearance. This was right after the heartbreaking mutant massacre on Genosha, so Xavier returned to his X-Men when they needed his support the most. On top of this, he could now walk with the help of his Shi'ar exoskeleton. Before his birth, Xavier sensed the malevolent presence of his twin and tried to kill her in the womb. That was the beginning of his psychic abilities, which made him a brilliant youth. During one of his countless trips, Xavier encountered the alien named Lucifer, who permanently damaged his legs, leaving Charles's bottom half paralyzed. Magneto and Charles started out as close friends who shared their concerns for mutant kind and held great respect and admiration for one another. However, their methods conflicted, and the tension amidst them majorly influenced the fate of generations of mutants. As an alpha-level mutant, Charles Xavier possesses the most powerful brain in existence. His primary powers of telepathy are enhanced even more by the device known as Cerebral. Cyclops! Scott Summers' resident party animal, said no one ever. Scott was the first ever X-Man, a mutant who took his responsibilities very seriously. X-Men 97 opens with Scott dealing with the aftermath of Xavier's apparent death and worrying about how he would lead the X-Men. He was supported by Jean all along, but the thought of leaving the team to raise their son privately seemed unthinkable. Unlike some live-action versions of his character, this show portrayed him fairly. Comic book fans know that he isn't the uptight leader who ruins the fun for others. In fact, Scott Summers is an idealist who tirelessly worked to bring Xavier's vision of peace to life. He deserves praise for his efforts and then some. Although his romantic life is a bit of a roller coaster, like most mutants on this list, a young Scott's story began in tragedy. His parents' private jet was struck down by the Shi'ar just as Scott and his brother were pushed out of the plane. Scott's mutant abilities activated for the first time as he used his optic blast to soften their fall. Scott ran into the evil mastermind, Mr. Sinister, who tirelessly tortured the young mutant in an attempt to break him. But luckily for Scott, he was soon rescued by Charles Xavier. Cyclops' central ability consists of his powerful optic blasts, which are ruby-colored concussion blasts made from ambient energy, or as Wolverine describes them, coming from a frickin' nuke inside his head. Apart from this, Scott is also a genius tactician and strategist, which makes him an excellent leader.
Electromagnetic cluster grenade.
Cable! Nathan Summers, son of Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers. A grizzled time traveler whose life has been a tragedy from his conception, his first appearance in episode 5 of X-Men 97 was as sentimental as it was thrilling. He visited his mother briefly, and Madeline instantly recognized Cable as an adult Nathan. She couldn't mistake her son's eyes for anyone else. He barely had time to warn the others of an incoming attack by an army of Sentinels. He returned in episode 7 to defeat Bolivar Trask and warn the team of the greater threat posed by Mr. Sinister. We think Cable doesn't get enough credit for all his peacekeeping throughout the paradoxical continuity of space and time. Not only did his own mother try to sell him for a demonic deal in a fit of madness, but he was painfully infected by a life-threatening virus as a baby, a condition which he had to deal with for the rest of his life. He was hardly met with any peace even after being transported 2,000 years into the future. He had his beloved wife and child ripped away from him by his own evil clone. I mean, come on, can this guy catch a break already? But given his messy life, Cable still remains fiercely protective of his kind and timeline. Cable is technically classified as an Omega-level mutant with his inherited powers of telepathy and telekinesis, but most of his energy is directed towards keeping his techno-organic virus in check.
The name Sunspot definitely got more flair.
Sunspot! Roberto da Costa was the rich trust fund kid who we first saw in the very first episode of the show. Just like Jubilee, he was rescued by the X-Men from the Friends of Humanity, a pro-human, anti-mutant extremist group. But Roberto didn't seem too pleased at the prospect of being rescued by a group of militant mutants. This boiled down to the resentment he held towards his own mutant abilities and how they made him different from regular folk. In the Danger Room, Jubilee tried to uncover his powers, but Wolverine enjoyed scaring the young mutant more. In the comics, Roberto was the son of the Afro-Brazilian millionaire named Emmanuel de Costa. When Roberto was 14, he was a football superstar, until a racist player angered him to the point that his mutant abilities showed themselves for the first time. He utilized superhuman strength and was covered in a non-reflective black substance which instilled terror in the human onlookers. The storyline in the comics follows Charles Xavier enrolling Roberto in his school and making him a member of the New Mutants. And for a long time, Roberto never allowed himself to take pride in his mutant powers. As far as those powers go, he's able to absorb solar radiation and metabolize it for different purposes, such as thermokinesis, photokinesis, energy blasts, and solar rechanneling.
Remember it.
Gambit! The charming Remy LeBeau, also known as Gambit. He was most well known for his romance with Rogue until his heroic sacrifice in episode 5 of this show. The episode, titled Remember It, depicted the attack of the Sentinels on the mutant island of Genosha. Most of the X-Men were unaware of this incoming assault while Rogue, Magneto, and the others tried to stop it. Mr. Sinister sends an army of thousands of Sentinels and lays waste to the entire population of Genosha. In this battle, Gambit chose to attack the Alpha Sentinel, an enormous monster, and used his last breath to create a kinetic explosion so powerful that he destroyed it. As preparation for Season 2 begins, is Gambit set up to return as Apocalypse's Horseman of Death. Remy's beginning in this world was as an outcast. Abandoned by his family at birth for his glowing crimson eyes, he was taken in by the Thieves Guild. He also sought out Mr. Sinister's help to manage his overwhelming mutant abilities. As time passed, his old friend Storm integrated him into the X-Men, where he met his love, Rogue, but due to her powers, the two could never truly touch each other. At the same time, his main power was taking stored energy from any given object and converting it to kinetic energy, thus making that object explosive. This also applies to static interference, vibration emission, and pulling objects apart. The card thrower also has hypnotic charm as part of his arsenal.
Was found murdered in Mexico City today.
It's Bastion.
Wolverine, the mutant who's the best there is at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. Fans are on the edge of their seats to see Wolverine's comeback in Season 2. The last we saw him was in the episode titled Tolerance's Extinction Part 2, where Logan lived out a moment from the comics. It began with Wolverine pushing Magneto too far by stabbing him. Did this really mark the end of their feud? The Master of Magnetism turned around and began to pull the adamantium from Wolverine's bones. We know that his skeleton is encased in metal. This threatened to pull Wolverine apart, but it also begged the question, will Logan return stronger in Season 2? It's been suggested that the adamantium was actually making Logan weaker by blocking his natural mutant abilities of instant regeneration. But let's go back to where it all began. James Howlett was a victim of abuse that greatly disturbed him as a youth, but as his healing powers grew, this somewhat repaired the trauma in his mind. As a near-immortal warrior, Logan was abducted and forced to be the subject of the Weapon X program. During this time, they bonded his skeleton with adamantium. After centuries of wandering, he found belonging in the most unlikely place, the team of the X-Men. In addition to his regenerative healing factor and hyper-extended lifespan, Wolverine's deadliest weapons are his retractable claws paired with his even deadlier berserker rage. Omega Red! In episode 8 of X-Men 97, things really begin to heat up. Could Magneto have been right all along? Given the lengths mutants went to protect humans, they still willingly gave away their own humanity to fight them. Could mutants and humans coexist in peace ever, at all? As it turned out, Val Cooper was working alongside Bastion and Mr. Sinister all along, but she freed Magneto, who had had enough and unleashed a worldwide magnetic pulse. The world began to shut down, Prime Sentinels fell, and Omega Red was one of the many mutants who reacted. Also known as Arkady Rosovich, he was the cybernetically enhanced Red Soldier who served the Soviet Union. Arkady's beginnings were dark, and even before his mutant abilities were realized, the youth seemed to have a lust for bloodshed. He committed heinous crimes and targeted young children, but when he was caught and executed by the Red Army, Rosovich's mutant powers saved him at the last moment. He was captured by the KGB and mixed into the Soviet Super Soldier program. Following his bodily enhancements, Omega Red came to be known as Wolverine's deadliest enemies. His most recognizable cybernetic weapon is his carbonadium tentacles located in his arms. They were made from an artificial alloy, a weak attempt at replicating adamantium. Along with this, Omega Red possesses the Death Factor, which is the lethal pheromones that he emits from his body.
Your dark desire.
They shall know my infinite
Madeline Pryor. Episode 2 of the show, titled Mutant Liberation Begins, ended with a cliffhanger. A woman who looked identical to Jean Grey showed up at the mansion's front door. Beast quickly determines that this new Jean was actually the real deal. If you remember, back in the original X-Men series in the 90s, Mr. Sinister kidnapped Jean Grey, but what we didn't see was him replacing her with a clone. Mr. Sinister planted Madeline Pryor in Scott's life in order to gain access to his DNA. By episode 3, the villainous mastermind took control of the clone's mind and turned her into the Goblin. Madeline then brought her baby Nathan to Mr. Sinister, who infected him with the deadly techno-organic virus. In the comics, her story goes back to the moment when Jean remained in suspended animation while the Phoenix Force looked for another host to bond with. It found Madeline, Jean's genetic clone. A grieving Scott met Madeline in Alaska, who reminded him of his supposedly dead lover. They fell in love, got married, and had a child, according to Mr. Sinister's schemes. But Scott abandoned this family and went back to Jean the moment she came back to life. When Madeline was told her true origins, she lost sight of what really mattered and sought to sacrifice her baby in order to open a portal between Earth and Limbo. As Jean's clone, she possessed the same abilities of telepathy and telekinesis. The deal she made with the demon Sim granted her powers of demonic augmentation. Nightcrawler. A creature of night and shadows, Kurt Wagner got to show off his impressive teleportation skills in episode 8, when Bastion's prime sentinels finally attacked. When the corrupted humans all across the globe began to awake, Nightcrawler and Wolverine were stuck in the X-Mansion defending an unconscious Rogue. Despite being a newcomer to the team, Kurt fought alongside Logan with everything he had in him. You see, he was defending a force much bigger than himself, his colleagues, and his newfound family. He refused to lose more than he already had, so Pirate Nightcrawler picked up 3 swords, one in each hand and one in his tail. He rapidly teleported around the room, taking out sentinel after sentinel. Kurt was passionate about the vision of peace for mutants. Tracing his origins, Kurt was the love child of the shape-shifting mutant Mystique and her blind, future-telling lover, Destiny. Mystique was married to a European nobleman at the time and pretended to be Mystique while Destiny actually birthed the child. It almost worked too, but the townsfolk were horrified at Kurt's appearance and believed that Mystique and Kurt were demons. After being chased out of town, Kurt was taken into a circus where he was accepted for his mutant nature while being raised by a Romani woman named Margalie. Kurt's main power is his ability to teleport, which he does by displacing himself through the Brimstone dimension. Along with this, he also has his little elf helpers, Bamfs. Along with being the noise he makes whenever he teleports, these funny little guys enhance his powers and act as beacons.
Stop being a creep, Morph.
Morph, aka Kevin Sidney, is also the mutant who's most likely in love with Wolverine. Morph went from a forgettable side character to a significant part of the team in the cartoon canon. The creators of X-Men 97 also confirmed that Morph was a non-binary character due to the fact that they're a shapeshift. They're the clown of the group, providing us with comedic relief in tense moments. There are only a few characters that Morph has turned into, such as Charles Xavier in episode 1, followed by Jean Grey, making fun of her exhausting perfection. Morph was also seen turning into and mimicking the powers of other superheroes like Quicksilver and the Hulk. What fans enjoyed the most was the dynamic duo of Morph and Logan, who quickly turned into an adorable ship. Of course, in the finale of season 1, Morph, disguised as Jean Grey, did declare their love for Logan while he was in a deep coma. In the comics, Morph's exact origins are hazy, but we do know that they began working for the evil organization Factor 3 as the second in command of the Mutant Master. Years later, they properly impersonated Charles Xavier with his permission. Xavier even lent them some of his psychic powers. As their name suggests, Morph is a metamorph. This means that they can psionically change the formation of their biological cells and duplicate any other person. To do so perfectly, Morph is also gifted with a photographic memory.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful involuntary friendship.
Beast! Dr. Hank McCoy is another member of Xavier's first class. In X-Men 97, he was a crucial part of the team, maintaining the advanced technology of the Danger Room and Blackbird Jet. He's a brilliant scientist who delivers perfect solutions with proven facts and seasons his explanations with quotes from classic literature. Beast is what happens if you get all brains and all bronze in a single mutant. Despite how scary he can look, Beast is a gentle soul that provides clarity in worrisome times. Like the moments after Storm lost her powers, as Beast explained the implications of the incident. He was the one who determined who the real Jean Grey truly was. Moving on to his origins, Hank's father was exposed to unnatural amounts of radiation, which resulted in his son being a mutant. Right from when he was a little boy, Hank had exceptionally large hands and feet, great physical prowess, and a prodigal intelligence. This caught the attention of Charles, who invited the young mutant to study at his school for gifted youngsters. After finishing his doctoral studies, Hank began work as a genetic researcher. Here, he conceptualized a serum from the hormonal extract that created his mutation. This would go on to become the foundation for the mutant growth hormone. Hank unwittingly drank the serum and sprouted fur all over his body, canine teeth, and slashing claws, as he became the beast we're familiar with today. His mutant power mostly comprises his superhuman strength, speed, agility, and reflexes, along with a small regenerative healing. Of course, he takes the most pride in his intelligence. Bishop! This time-traveling mutant went back in time and joined the very team he had only heard about through fairy tales. Since his role in X-Men the Animated Series, fans wondered why he was still fighting alongside the team in X-Men 97. Last we saw him, he had presumably returned to his future in the year 2055. In episode 3, titled Fire Made Flesh, it was revealed that Bishop can't go back to his reality as his time band was busted. But Beast was eventually able to fix it, and Bishop departed for the future with baby Nathan Summers in hand. The timeline Bishop was originally from was as dystopian as it got. Mutant kind was trapped in concentration camps following the mass genocide of humans at the hands of the mutant messiah. Young Lucas Bishop and his sister were stuck in such a state, but their grandmother often told them the heroic tales of the X-Men, who were urban legends. Eventually, some humans and mutants joined forces for what came to be known as the Summers Rebellion. When Bishop arrived in the present, he was startled by the way mutants and humans coexisted. His entry into the X-Men team wasn't the smoothest, as Storm disapproved of his brash ways. Bishop's main power is energy absorption, which includes magic, sound, light, psychic, and psionic energies. He can also metabolize energy to store it in his personal reserves. Also, you can't forget about his space-time orientation, which allows him to time travel smoothly. Jubilee, Jubilation Lee, the mutant with fireworks in her fingertips. In X-Men 97, Jubilee is a young mutant in training. In the first episode, she relates to Roberto when he feels out of place among the other X-Men. In episode 4, Motendo, Magneto didn't let Jubilee celebrate her 18th birthday, telling the team to train harder instead. But Roberto and Jubilee got up to their own mischief and got pulled into a Motendo video game created by the evil interdimensional entity known as Mojo. She encountered an older digital version of herself who insisted she couldn't stay in the game forever, despite how good it felt, because it would ultimately be an unfulfilling existence. As for her comic book origins, Jubilee was the daughter of two rich Hong Kong immigrants. She was a rebellious kid, and one day running away from security in the mall resulted in her bright mutant powers manifesting. She was also hunted by the mutant hunters known as the M Squad, but in a stroke of luck, she ran into the X-Men. She followed them back to their base in Australia, which was under attack. Here, she discovered Logan in a near-death state and gently nursed him back to health. Her powers are known as Lumikinetic Explosive Light Blasts, and they're really cool. These fireworks are known as energy plasmoids, which are basically globules of energy that can be used as offensive explosions. Archangel. Back in the 90s, Archangel played a major role in X-Men the Animated Series. He also made a cameo in X-Men 97, notably in episode 5 titled Remember It. We can see him in his original form flying over the Hellfire Gala just a few moments before the Sentinels attack Genosha. We can't forget Morph's incredible transformation into Archangel in the pilot also. Known as Warren Worthington III, this mutant tragically fell into the vice grip of Apocalypse. Before this, he was known as a millionaire playboy who had grown large feathered wings, which made him look like a corrupted angel. An evil priest named the Hunter was obsessed with killing mutants and went after Warren at the cost of his own life. He became a masked superhero named the Avenging Angel, which caught Xavier's attention and made him the third of 5 founding members of the X-Men team. His journey as a hero was sabotaged by Apocalypse, who brainwashed him and made him his horseman of death. Angel's skin turned blue and his beautiful feather wings turned biometallic. Warren was able to eventually escape, but Apocalypse left some serious trauma. It is said that Archangel is a Shearath, aka an angel-like mutant, as per Azazel. Much like a bird, Angel has hollow bones and other small mutations that adapt him to flying. Marvelous verdict! There you have it, folks, the most powerful mutants who played a pivotal role in X-Men 97. We gotta say, this show is shaping up to be one of the best things that Marvel Animation has put out in years. As everyone eagerly awaits Season 2, we can only hope that the showmakers continue to build on all the characters we spoke about in this video. Who was your favorite character in X-Men 97? Is there anybody you're hoping to see, or maybe any survivors of Genosha that you got your fingers crossed for? Let us know in the comments down below, and in the meantime, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.
And all children of the atom